Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyan Atmani Mayaya Bahiribodbhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanam Evadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. So once again in today's class, I would like to go over some details of what we are going to do in these series of Vision and Promise of Vedanta on Tuesday nights that we have started now. So I don't intend to do any real teaching today. That will really begin in earnest 2 weeks from today. As you know, next week, November 5th, is election night, and we have elected to cancel the class on that night because the elections in the evening will be of great interest to many of us, including myself. So we will not have a class next week, and we will begin the teaching from 2 weeks from now. So today, the purpose of these classes, which is to expand upon the concepts and principles that we employed a couple of weeks ago in our retreat, will be explained. So the concepts and I would say more than concepts, just the methodology, the very approach of teaching will take up from, I think, a successful pilot that we did at the retreat on October 12th and 13th. So what were some of these underlying principles that we talked about in the retreat? So let's just review that, and then I'll go forward with it. So, as if you remember, on the second day, I talked about the importance of this mantra from the Kathopanishad, the 23rd mantra of the second chapter, which says the following: Na ayam atma pravachanena labhya na medhaya na bahuna shrutena yam eva esha vrinute tena labhya tasya esha atma vivrinute tanugum swam. Beautiful mantra. Just a beautiful mantra. So let's understand the words of it and the importance of it, and how we will base our approach in these classes based on this very important advice in the Kathopanishad. Where he says, Na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha. So this atma is not obtained. Labhyaha means obtained, to grasp, to understand. Na pravachanena, not by talking about it, not even teaching about it. You cannot do that. Na medhaya. So here the commentary of Adi Shankara and others also I can recall from there. Medhaya means memory. So here what it means is, so the Medha Shakti is actually very important So it goes both ways, that what should be done and what should not be done. Here, the medha doesn't mean simple memorization of chanting. Yeah, that's very pleasant and very absorbing. When you reach, I was just talking to a couple of students who said that they really enjoy chanting by heart, Rudram and other chants. They just feel very good about it. So this is what will called be memorization. So not by memorization can you obtain Atma. That is not the direct method. It may be a secondary method, but not the direct method. Na bahuna shrutena. Not by listening to it many times. This is interesting. We'll go into that a little bit more in detail about that. Bahuna shrutena means by listening it from different people, reading also from texts and so on, many times. Because sometimes we feel that if we do it enough times, if we repeat it, and we study a wide range of Shruti literature and so on, somehow I will really reach where I want to go. So here it says no. No matter how you... So this is somewhat surprising and disappointing. Hey, this is what I'm doing. And, we've taught so many different Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and so on. So is that useless? No, not useless, but you cannot approach it. You cannot end with just doing that. So this is the first line. Then the second line is, so if there it says, na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha, na atma medhaya labhyaha, na bahuna shrutena labhyaha. You cannot obtain this, you cannot obtain that, you cannot obtain this, that way. Then, yam eva esha vrinute. So we saw that in the explanation in the retreat. Vrinute means, so vra means to choose. To choose. Vrinute. Tena labhyaha. The one who chooses. So we can say, well, I've chosen it. I'm out of all the people that I know, we are studying Vedanta. What else do you want me to do? I've chosen Vedanta to study. So what do you mean by the one who chooses? I've chosen. But I have not seen the kind of results that I would like that has been promised by it. Why? So we'll go into that. So here he said, and so even now we will go into it. Yam eva esha vrinute tena labhyaha. And so here in the explanation, particularly by Swami Akhandananda, in the way he expands on this and so on, says the following. And this is seconded by so many acharyas, a lot of the literature and so on. So it's well ascertained. There's no question about that. And so I'll explain a couple of different ways how this is approached by other acharyas also. So here he says that the concept of marriage, and I think we talked about this in the retreat, but just to bring it up again, the importance of this, we need to understand that. The concept of marriage in one's life is extremely important. So what that happens is that when we are not married and we want to engage in some relationship with someone else, then we look around to see which one will be the best person for me. So we date in the Western system, and even if you are not in the old Indian system, although the modern Indian system is also mimicking the Western dating approach. But in the old one, even though you were not dating, you always had your lookout. You always had some favorite people that you wish I could really get to them. And you're in love with somebody, or even if you are not in love with somebody, you have some favorable impression about others. So you haven't chosen yet. So those are possibilities that you are exploring, right? And then you get married. And how you get married is a separate issue. If you want to get married by the Indian system, Hindu system, where something is really done for you, you are consulted by all means, but you're not the sole determinator of, what's the word, determining factor of choosing the vara. It's done for you. But regardless of whether it is done for you or in the Western system where you actually decide one day, this is the person I want to get married to. Anyway, regardless of that, what happens is, let's see what happens. Your investigation into others, so let's look at it from a Western standpoint. Your dating stops, or should stop. If it doesn't, then you've got a real problem. But your dating stops. Your looking around stops. You don't really think about, I wish I had, what was it? I saw this joke the other day. He said, I feel like I should have learned something from iPhones. That in iPhone, you feel sometimes, I wish I had waited for a later model. Similarly, if you wish that I waited for somebody else to come along. So it doesn't matter, but the point is that you have now chosen. So what does that mean, chosen? What it means is your drishti, your approach, your conclusion is now concentrated on one person. And now the real progress in your life begins, because it is you are going to definitely face, after the honeymoon period is over, you are ready to now face the realities where some good things are going to happen, some not so good things are going to happen. You're going to be happy, you're going to be disappointed in the other person. All of those will have to be factored into your life. And so from that perspective, the marriage becomes a very important element for your growth. What do you mean by important element for your growth? Because before marriage, you were impatient. You wanted to get the right person. If it's the right person, then you don't have to continue with that person. And now, the person that you married, whether it's the right person or not, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And in the process of dealing with it, you also change. You also become more tolerant. You become more outwardly bound, not just for yourself. All of these things happen. So there it means two aspects of that. Whether or not it is yielding results for you yet or not, you don't look around for alternatives. At least not in the Indian system, although even there is now getting corrupted by the possibility of divorces. But in the in the old Hindu marriage system, there is no question of a divorce. And it really just purifies you and makes you better. I think I'll tell you, it's interesting. I think I've mentioned this to you before. This was a very important lesson I learned in my early life. So I had an uncle, my mother's oldest brother. So he was married to a lady who was, and it was all a joint system. We also used to live together. And she was a terror. She would not let anything under her skin. She would just go back to it. She used to talk back to her father-in-law. All kinds of problems used to happen. And tough lady. She was also very productive. She used to cook a lot. She used to take care of the whole family. But even as a young person, I said, my God, what an abrasive person this is. My uncle, on the other hand, by just living with her, became a more gentle and evolved soul. I could see that. He became a sadhu. My gosh, I remember his disposition. He's always smiling. And I used to say, does he deserve this? That question is not important. What's important is that what he became through his marriage with this woman. Because there was no question of a divorce. At the worst, what you can do is the woman can go to her mother's house for a week. That was it. Then her parents all send her back and say, no, that's up. You go make up with the other people, go back. That's it. Temporary. But in the process of dealing with what I would call adversity, meaning that her disposition was not very pleasing and so on, he became a very pious sadhu. I remember him so well. The last time I saw him, just to give you an idea, was the day my wife and I decided to come back to the US in 1970, December 70. And it was the day the India and Pakistan war was going on. I'm mixing up a year, maybe it's 69, 70, one of those years. I'm not very good at that. And so we flew out of Bombay at that time, where we were staying at my uncle's place. And early in the morning, we had to catch a plane to San Francisco from Bombay. And it was a blackout because the Pakistanis were looking for some cities to bomb, and they just didn't want any light. And so my uncle, same person that I'm talking about, got up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, called a taxi of a person he knew very well, and said, my nephew and his wife are going to the USA. Please come here, and the condition is you have to drive a taxi without any lights. And he found a very good driver. And I remember going from Matunga, where he used to live. Those of you that know Bombay will know that, all the way up to the Santa Cruz airport, several miles, all in dark. And I remember saying namaste to my uncle, and then he passed away before I ever saw him. That's a great person. So the Indian marriage system is for the inner growth of a person. We're not really looking for pleasant experiences all the time. We expect experiences to be varied, but in the meantime, what happens is that we introspect. Think about, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? What do I want from life? All those things come up. So this is where it says that really problems that you face, adversities that you face, are your best friends, my dear. Ishvara has personally written and saying, give him some problems. I want him to grow. This is what happened. But we ignore it. We ignore it. Why do these things happen to me? Anyway, so going back to our topic, I said I'm not going to teach, but I'm teaching. I guess whatever happens, I just take it up. So this verse says, you have to choose. And if you choose, something very interesting happens. That is given in the last quarter of this verse. Yam eva esha vrinute tena labhyaha. This is the first part of the second line. Then the last part is very interesting. It says, Tasya esha atma vivrunute tanugum swam. Tasya, or to that person, this atma, esha atma, your own self, vivrunute. Vivrunute means to expose yourself, to reveal yourself. And what do you reveal? Tanum swam, tanugum or tanum swam. There's some Sanskrit here that I'm not sure that I used to look it up, but there's something there, but I remember the meaning of this. You reveal your form, your body. This is also taken from the vrinute. So the implication here is, the analogy here is that your partner will not get intimate with you, not expose oneself to you by revealing your true form until you become intimate with that person. Very beautiful analogy. Because the intimate contact happens when you're not wearing clothes. You see exactly as you are. So what happens is that until then, the Atma that you see is wearing clothes. Adhyaropa apavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchate. Really what we see each other, when I see you with clothes on. When I see myself, and not just the external clothes, but also internal clothes. Because I see myself through my mind, not only through, but as my mind, isn't it? When you ask somebody, please describe yourself. What are you going to do? How are you going to describe yourself? You're going to describe yourself, I'm happy. I'm pretty happy these days. Clothes, because you are covered by a happy mind. Or you can say, I'm an expert in such and such field. It's a covering of that field. You're always looking at yourself from the standpoint of covering. And then on top of that, you're wearing clothes. You're always looking, yeah, I look nice. I sit here and I feel I'm a teacher. So I'm wearing this ochre color cloth. This idea occurred to me about, I don't know, I think you can tell me when I started this about 20 years ago. I just suddenly realized, I said, I'm wearing all these funny kurtas and shirts and so on. If I'm teaching Vedanta, and I'm not a Swami, so I cannot wear all these ochre clothes. I chose not to do that. But at least I can do something which at least looks decent. So my mother was still alive at that time. So I went to Delhi one time and I said, Mommy, please, can you, so she and I went shopping. And we got 4 kurtas of the old kind, which I have, which I only wear in winter time. It's almost about to have. And then when she passed away, I'd asked my sister, and we couldn't find the same clothing. She found this. And so I'm now wearing this. Anyway, we are always looking at others and myself, both, doesn't matter. So the meaning is this. It says, your Atma will not expose its true form to you, my dear, until you decide to get intimate with it. And it will not get intimate with you. You cannot get intimate without getting married. You have to get married. And you have to get married by saying, I really want this. So the other acharyas, for example, give the same example by to say that Paramatma, Ishvara, ultimately is very discriminating. It will not let you understand and get close to itself until you decide everything else in life is not that important. I really want this. So this is the message. We have to choose. And I was talking about that in the second day, that sometimes I was saying this, I want to admonish you. Because I can see the people, how they want to be, they want to know, but they're not sincere. Not sincere. You've got to really do this. It's your choice. It's whatever you want to do. You want to keep dating? Fine. No problems. It's your choice. But you have to decide. So this is the meaning of what is called Ishvara Kripa, Shastra Kripa, Guru Kripa, Atma Kripa. This is what is called Atma Kripa. Your own mind will not refine itself, become more subtle, and all. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, until you also give the sankalpa. Okay, this is what I want to do. And the thing is that you won't do this until, so it's a push-pull kind of a thing. You will not choose it until it is clear to you that this is more important for me. See, that's the thing. I don't blame anyone. I'm not putting anybody down, because it's not clear to most of us what the value is. Oh yeah, you'll become free and you'll become, oh, those kind of look nice, sound on the surface. But I've got movies to see, I've got family members, I've got birthdays to go to, and I've got parties, and I have some places to see, and 49ers game is coming up. All those kinds of things. Yeah, this is also important. I will get to it. I'm attending Vijayji's classes. What else do you want me to do? You need to do more than that. This is what we're going to come to it. So it is really Atma Kripa. You have to do it. I was somewhere I was, this occurred to me. This, you must have heard of this. It's called the last mile connection, if I remember. So you have all these, electronic connections to your internet connection to your home. And you can go to Comcast or AT&T, and they will lay out cables and so on and so forth. Then it is taking the cable from the road to inside your home. And that's always the most expensive, most troublesome, because the other ones can be done on a mass scale. So this is something like that, really, because reading the Bhagavad Gita, and those are very clear ideas. You say, I see this. People will say, I want to really attend your classes. And I said, well, that's wonderful. He said, what has been your spiritual background? They'll say, well, I don't know. I've read some books on Hinduism and so on. But have you studied some? Have you understood what the importance of Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad? No, I don't know any about that. Well, you need to do that. So that is kind of like laying all the cables. Then comes the choice that this is what I want to do. And as I said earlier, that choice of what you want to do sometimes is not clear. This is where, in some ways, the blessing of the Lord comes, honestly. I don't know how that happened to me. I cannot explain it to you. I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not that smart. My memory is not that good. How did I get into this? I have no idea. But now I'm in it. You can't take me away from it. And I can see things very clearly now. How it happened, why me? So I quite understand where people will not give up dating, as I said, because they're not sure they want to get married to Paramatma. They're not sure yet. It sounds kind of good, but Paramatma is also saying, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to reveal myself to you. This is the situation. So it means, so why am I saying all this is that in some ways, my job is to convince you in these series of classes that, number one, it is an amazing thing. You have to really understand. If you do, you cannot believe what will happen to you. Number one. So that's one of the things that I will attempt to do through all these concepts and so on and so forth. Secondly, I will tell you that you need to get serious. I can only do one half of it. This is the very meaning of Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishabhai, Vahayai. Is that you need to get. And if you're not there, fine, I'll give my classes and I will feel good about it, and that's the end of it. So this course has to really, and I guess the other thing I wanted to tell you is that anyway, there's a number of other things that I want to, well, since I started that, let me finish that. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that what we are going to do in this course, other than the two things I talked about, that I'm going to work very hard to convince you that this is something extraordinary. Because sometimes you attend classes and you say, oh yeah, I've heard this and so on and so forth, and people ask some simple questions and then you answer them and then they go ahead and so it may not be really convincing. And it may be my shortcoming or our shortcoming as teachers, that we haven't really convinced you about the enormity of this vidya. So that's one. And then the other one is that I want you to also be married to this Vidya. But another thing I would like to tell you is that in this course, we're going to go into what I have already talked about in several times to you. You will recognize it as graduate level Vedanta, advanced Vedanta, PhD level Vedanta. We may start in the beginning, but my objective is to take you to the very advanced level. And you will not appreciate it until you work hard. You will not graduate. You will stay at the undergrad level and you will, so this will be the Dvaita vision, the vision of the Dvaita. Well, you say, I'm the Sakshi, this is the world, I'm happy, I'm doing meditation and I feel good, everything, I'm a lot better than I used to be. This is still Dvaita. It's all Dvaita. But the Advaita means, oh my goodness, I can't believe I am the whole thing. And we're going to go into that. And if you haven't even graduated from the fundamentals, you'll get bored. It'll look like, oh, it sounds interesting. One of these days, maybe I'll study it. That will happen. You won't grasp it. So this course really is spanning across high school, undergraduate, and go all the way up to the graduate level. How long it takes, I don't know. It will take a while. But let's embark on this journey. You know, I was thinking about this. This is a very important point that I'm going to make, and we will explain and expand on this point later. But a phone call from a student, a relatively experienced student in the last couple of days, kind of prompted me to bring this up. Okay, so let me go through that, and then we'll, as part of the objective of this course. The objective of the course is, as I mentioned already, to take you to a high level of understanding, and also expect you to participate, as I've already talked about the ECS concept, where you have to write things down, and when you are listening to me, don't multitask, all those kinds of things. I'm hoping you do that. I'm not saying I'm expecting, but I'm hoping. If you do that, those are the objectives of this course. The goal of the course, by the way, there's a difference between objectives and goal. The goal of the course is something that I just wrote to you about in the WhatsApp. The goal of the course is that each one of you should be able to teach someone about this entire course. You may not be able to go all the way up to the PhD level, it doesn't matter. But you should feel both capable and confident about teaching this to someone else. As I mentioned to you, Swami Paramarthananda really gave me just an absolute wonderful advice. Because when I saw him, I was recovering from a heart attack and a bypass operation that laid me down for several months. And the classes I was teaching in my home were suspended. There were like, 10, 15 people that used to come before that. And so he asked me, what are you doing? I said, Swamiji, my own study goes on, but I'm not teaching. He says, get back to it. I was a little taken aback by his emphasis on it. And then he went on to explain. He says, the same thing happened to me. That I felt that I don't have to teach. I am very happy with what I'm doing. But he says, my real progress only came when I started teaching. And then he explained to me all the things. I had a very long session with him for 1 hour in the morning at Anaikatti. And with Swamiji had invited me, or Puja Swamiji had invited me, and all the sadhus were there, and all the household graduates that had studied with him were also there. And so I met Swami Paramarthananda and had a nice talk with him at that time. So he was the one who has told me. He says, you must teach, because it's almost like a test. If you want to test whether you know it or not, start teaching. Because if your students don't understand it, that means that you have not really explained in a manner it should be done. So my goal for each one of you in your life, if you want to test yourself, is to find someone. Could be one person, could be two people, could be three people, whatever. But find someone. And in this manner, don't just teach one text. That's a good thing to do, like Gajananam is doing on Tattvabodha. That's good. But I'd like you to do and say, shall I give you an introduction to what Vedanta is? And you do it from your own notes, from your own mind, and you bring in the text as necessary, but these are your thoughts. That is the goal. Okay? Now let me tell you that important thing I was going to say about. So, what brought to my mind, believe it or not, this is a very interesting, strange thing that I'm going to talk about, is the architecture of a Hindu temple. You're sitting here saying, what? He's talking about Vedanta and now he's suddenly gone into architecture of a Hindu temple. The architecture of a Hindu temple is traditional Hindu temple, which are mostly in the south. The north has gone away from it for whatever reason, is mimicking both the human body and the Atma that holds the human body. The temple architecture mimics the human body. You may have already heard this and seen it, so it may be, but I just want to underscore a couple of important points on this. Okay, so listen to on this part of it. So the Hindu temple is made in the same structure as the human body. How? So it has 5 layers. It has Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. And inside the Anandamaya Kosha, which I think is the Anandamaya Kosha, I'm a little vague on that, is the Sanctum Sanctorum, where the idol, the Vigraha, is kept. This is the architecture of the Hindu temple. So now let's look at the implications of this. Why am I saying this at this point? It's for the following reason. If you look at the Hindu temple, and I won't go into the details of that. I think I have somewhere in the notes where each kosha is represented by if you go to some of the temples, you would actually see an exact replica of all this. But I won't go into the details of it, but I want to make some certain basic points about it. One is that the outer layer of the temple is the market, the bazaar, where garlands are being sold, anubhuti, not anubhuti, but bhuti is being sold, prasad is being sold if you want to go and give prasad to it and so on. It's a relatively noisy, dirty area where shoes are necessary. You cannot walk around in these streets. It reminded me when I was when we went to Vishwanath Temple in Varanasi about 2 years ago. We were supposed to, and it was all taken, somebody was really chaperoning us around. So they took us to a shop and said, okay, you have to put your shoes here. So there's a locker room and you put your shoes there, your iPhone also, your cell phone also, everything you have to do. I don't remember whether our wallets also had to be put there. I can't remember that. But anyway, we did that. Then we have to walk on these streets to the very entrance to the temple. And it was really rough because the streets were dirty, they were wet, they were uneven, they had pebbles there, and you're not wearing anything, no socks, no shoes. It was interesting what we did it. So anyway, outside the temple, you can wear shoes. You better wear shoes. You cannot take your shoes off there. You shouldn't take your shoes off there. This is the outer layer. This is called the Annamaya Kosha. So the Annamaya Kosha is when we are transacting with people, talking to them, fighting, getting angry, escaping, etc., etc. All these kinds of things, physical things take place with our shoes on. Then we enter the next layer. And in the temple, the next layer is where you take your shoes off. That's the last point, that you have to wear the shoes. I think Swami Dayananji once said, he says, this is very interesting. If you contrast with the Hindu temples with the Christian churches, you cannot enter a Christian church without wearing shoes. And you cannot enter a Hindu temple with wearing shoes. Look at the contrast. Anyway, apart from that, so you take your shoes off, and there's less crowds in there. It's more crowded, but not as much as outside. There's less jostling around. This is Pranamaya Kosha. You become quieter and so on. And then you keep on entering. And each recess of the temple becomes quieter, and so on. Okay, so you do. So at this time, in all these cases, you are walking. You're doing something. You can't just stand there because you haven't reached where you want to be. There's some things that need to do, and you better do it. You better calm your mind down. That's also an effort. You better become less talkative, which is also an effort. So there is all these kinds of things that need to be done. Then you reach the inner sanctum. And here's what happens in the inner sanctum. If you look at the traditional temples, okay, it's a very small area. Cannot take that many people. It is very dark. You have to almost it takes a while before you can even understand what is what. Otherwise, it's just totally dark. Totally dark. There might be some small diyas, lamps here and there that you can see, but otherwise it's totally dark. You don't know left from right. Then the door is closed when some necessary number of people have already entered, 30, 40, whatever the number is. And either the door closes or somebody says no more. You just wait. Because you have to do the darshan. You have to do the view of the idol, of the vigraha. And then, so at this point, so this is an important thing, you don't move. You don't go anywhere. You should not even jostle for position. Wherever you are, you stay. And you have a view, everybody has a view of what you're ready to see. So your movement starts, doing stops. Then the priest lights up the lamp and with a prayer, with the shloka, lights up the vigraha. It's not done through electricity. It has to be done through the wick of a lamp. And it's a very large one, so that, and then it says, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kuto yamagni tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Something like that, some kind of a shloka, whatever is favorite of that temple is done. During that time, the dark vigraha becomes visible. And more than the vigraha, the very jewels, the very beautiful clothing, the flowers which is bedecked, all become visible to you. And whether it is Rama or Krishna or Shiva or anyone with their whatever their the meaning is, just like our Dakshinamurti here, it becomes visible. It becomes visible for a short time. It was invisible to you, but it becomes visible to you for a short time. And then the puja is over, you're asked to leave, and the next batch of people come in. So this is how the Hindu temple is. So what is the importance of that for the Hindu, for the human body and the Atma? So this is what I wanted to say. So what happens is that the effort to reach the attempt to reach the inner sanctum sanctorum requires effort on your part. You have to give up the shoes. You have to wash your feet if they're dirty. You have to go inside, find your way in. There is some work to be done. There is a way. There is some progress. There is some visible movement. But once you go inside, you are still. There is no movement. And there is nothing that you need to do. You cannot take up a lamp, and you're not allowed to do that. You can't. You cannot take photographs. And the only thing that you have to do is to wait for the priest to show the Paramatma to you. And he will. He's a qualified person. He will show it to you. But you just watch. You don't even have to think. You don't have to do. Certainly not move. And you have the darshan. Darshan means the view of the reality, which is the inner reality of that temple. Presiding deity. That's the deity. I use the word idol, but the better word to use is a deity. It's a live deity. This is what happens. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because yesterday one of the students had called me and said that in a class they were having this discussion about Saguna Brahma and Nirguna Brahma. And everybody can agree, yes, on Saguna Brahma, you need to have a mind and a buddhi to understand what you mean. Saguna Brahma means that Paramatma with qualities. Yeah, the whole world is the quality of the Brahma, Saguna Brahma, Ishvara. So over there you need to have mind and buddhi and so on and so forth. But what about Nirguna Brahma? What kind of a mind? How is mind going to understand Nirguna Brahma? And so the student wanted to ask me, what do I think about that? So this is where this analogy came to my mind afterwards. I thought I'll talk about this. So what needs to be done? And this is how this course is going to unfold. At some point in time, you cannot see the infinite nature of yourself by yourself. You cannot see it. It's all dark to you. That is where the inner sanctum is. You cannot see it. You cannot do anything. This is what I wanted to point out. The mind and the buddhi, manaha and buddhi. Buddhi means, yeah, I think I can figure it out. This should be very logical. You know, like vidya is very logical. I should be able to, this is what buddhi means. And mana means the desire. I must do it. This is wonderful. I've been working on it and I got to do this. So this is mana and buddhi. These are also instruments. These are inner instruments. The outer instruments are that you have to travel, you have to go inside, and then once you're inside, you employ your inner instruments. Similarly, here also we study, we leave the outside world as like the Annamaya Kosha, and now we are studying something deeper, something more subtle, which is inner recesses of the body with our mind and body, and we want to go to the final thing. You can't do it. Can't do it. So what happens? How do I? Why are we doing all this? If I can't grasp it. So what is said is, you cannot grasp it in the way you are used to grasping. It doesn't work that way. As we will see this in more detail, Swami Akhandananda also in his Brahma Sutra book, this volume 3, just an absolute gem of a book, has pointed out that the mind cannot grasp infinity. We'll go into this in more detail. Then somebody has to tell you about the infinity that you are. And when that somebody, and this is the teaching, and a competent guru, this is the equivalent to the pujari, the priest. You have to depend on the priest to show the light on the dark deity. You can't do it yourself. You shouldn't move. You can't think even. Just keep your eyes open. Eyes open means your ability to listen. Then, if you are qualified, and so here the qualification is that you're here, this is interesting. I've gone to many temples. I remember this when just to go back to the qualification aspect of it, just for 1 second. When we went to the southern temples, Swami Dayanandji could feel that we're going to have a lot of problems. because I'm light-skinned. My wife is even more light-skinned than I am. And these local pujaris will say, these are foreigners, they're not Hindus. And so they won't allow you to even come in. And so we were accompanied generally by a person who used to carry a letter. It written in Tamil sometimes or in English will say, these are my students, they are Hindus, and please let them in. So then we would be allowed to go in. I remember this one temple where this guy from Singapore, I remember, young guy from Singapore, his body was full of cameras. He's got movie cameras here, still cameras here, and this was, he was hopping mad. So we said, what happened? He says, they will not allow me to go in. I look Chinese and they think you are not a Hindu, so what do I do? And then I came all the way to do this and so on and so forth. I said, these are the rules of qualifications. Whatever you can do, whatever it is, so the answer would be, what do you do? So this is not discrimination. This is qualification. I cannot have a 10-year-old nephew or a 3-year-old granddaughter to come in and talk to them the same way. They're not qualified to listen. Not qualified. It's a question of qualification. And this poor priest, he's got to make some quick determination. If it is a foreigner, then somebody has to say that this foreigner, non-Hindu, is actually studying and is qualified to understand. Then they will probably let them in. Probably not even then, but anyway, they will. So that's the situation. We need to be qualified to go inside. And once you are inside, so this is what I would attempt to do, is to try to qualify you. And at some point in time, if you're qualified, your thinking has to stop, because I'm going to tell you exactly who you are. And if you are highly qualified, you will say, oh my God. Once you see yourself, then the question of Saguna Brahma and Nirguna Brahma and this and that, all these talks from the Gita and so on and so forth will just fade into the background. So this is the process that we have to go through, and hopefully we will go through that. So this is also part of the course curriculum. I'm just telling you about how ambitious I'm going to be in teaching this, and I hope you are just as ambitious in receiving it, and together hopefully we will make a difference. Okay? I just wanted to make a comment on, when you have the priest light up the deity, the Vigraha, and what you see is the bare form of the deity bedecked with some beautiful jewels and flowers and clothing and so on and so forth. This is the glory of the deity. So similarly, when the teacher shows the glory of the Atma, and if you were to grasp it, if the light is really done, and the light reflects in your mind, you will see jewels. What kind of jewels? This is what the Vedanta talks about. Kenopanishad, we saw this verse. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. What more jewel do you want, my dear, than amritatvam? Amritatvam means the ability to be outside the limits of death. Because the deity of death, nothing is outside of that. There is no one that the Yamaraja, what is called Dharmaraja, in Kathopanishad, Yamaraja with Nachiketas, he visits everybody. Everyone is, what is that? What's it called? Scalpel, the one that he carries, is long enough. There's no one can escape it. No one can escape it. Absolutely no one. Whether you are a tyrant like Hitler, whether you're an extremely rich person, multi-billionaire, whether you are a pious person, extremely generous, very gentle, it doesn't matter who you are. The Yamaraja will come get you one day. And it is Dharmaraja. Dharmaraja means that when your time is come, he will come. Not before that also. I think I was telling you this. My mother used to get so mad at my dad. My dad would say, like most of the older people there at the very advanced stage, they will all say this one form or the other. I don't know why I'm alive. I'm not being useful to anyone. I'm just being a nuisance to everyone. I think I should just go. That just means that Yamaraja, please come and get me. I'm just being bothered. I'm bothering everybody else. I'm not being useful to it. My days are gone, so just take me away. My mother used to get so mad at my dad and say, "What?" This is one interesting thing. I would go there once a year to visit that was my goal every once a year. I must go. And many of you do that even more frequently. So every time I'll go, my dad will give me a hug at the end and he says, I think this is the last time I'm going to see you. So I say, come on, Dad, don't say things like that. My mom also would say, don't say that. It's okay. And I think he must have said it like for 8 or 10 years. Do you know the year once he didn't say it, I never saw him again. He died. Swami Dayanand used to give this example. He said there was this pious old lady who would say, oh Lord, please come and get me. I am just being a burden on everyone. And I'm not feeling well anyway, so just take me away. Every day she used to say, please Yamaraja, just come, and so on. So one day she got up in the morning and she saw this very huge dark figure with, you know how Yamaraja is depicted, that it's all darkness. And even his face is also covered with black clothing, and he's got this scalpel in his hand, and so on and so forth. So she says, who are you? She says, Mother, you have been calling me to approach you for, and your prayers I have now answered your prayers. So I am Yamaraja. She says, oh my God, you're Yamaraja. She says, wait, you're here? He says, you told me that you should come anytime. I'm here. She says, but wait, I haven't had breakfast yet. And I have to see my granddaughter. She's going to school. I have to say goodbye to her. Don't come in, just wait for a while. So he says, Amma, your time is up. He used to joke like that. He used to say, this is very interesting. It is such a blessing of the Lord that we are all standing in a line for the Yamaraja to come and get us. But what our position in the line is not known to us. In fact, otherwise what will happen is, just like, people that are given these death penalties, although becoming less and less, but supposing you are told, okay, on this day, you're going to die. Then not only on that day are they going to be unhappy, several years before that, oh my gosh, I've got only so many years left, so many months left, so many weeks left, so many days left, so many hours left. So he says Ishvara was very kind. He doesn't tell us when we are going to go, but we're going to go. The jewel of this deity is Amritatvam hi vindate. You can put like this to Yamaraja and say, you cannot touch me. Isn't this a jewel in the Atma? And there's so many others. This is just one of them. So don't say that this is not important. The only reason that it doesn't impress us is because we cannot even grasp the super importance of doing this. But this is what it is. Once you know the self, the game is over. Nothing can dislodge it. Hopefully we'll see that. So anyway, I think I've covered most of the points that I want to do. A few things, if you just give me a few more minutes. So we've already talked about our mutual work that we have to do, number one. Part of that is, as I mentioned to you in other words, that all these important concepts it'd be nice if you could learn Sanskrit words. You don't have to learn the language. Language is difficult at this age. If you're still young, please do it. That will be wonderful. Learn the grammar. But you don't need to. What you do need to do is to learn individual words and some shlokas. And so we will give you some methods to be able to do that. And Cherie had called me and said that I'm not sure that she can do it because she has a tablet and she doesn't know Devanagari. So I said, it's okay. You don't have to really do that. It's just learn the English words, and maybe over time, if you have time, you can translate it to Sanskrit, but you don't need to. It's okay. It's an additional qualification. So don't get hung up by that. But if you can, I think it will be good for you. Some of the students have been very helpful in giving me some ideas on how to do this. And over the next 2 weeks, I will go into it and give you some ideas on how to do that. I think another thing I would suggest to you, and this is also from many inputs that I have received from others, to do less independent study at this point. I find people saying, I'm also studying this and I'm doing this. Go ahead and do that. I'm not saying don't. But given the amount of importance, as long as you follow this methodology and you are giving it enough time to write notes, to connect them, learn Sanskrit, and so on, concentrate on that. I assure you, this is something that will really yield you good results to you. But if in addition to that, you're also doing translation of this, you're studying Bhagavad Gita, reading some other, learning how to chant the Gita. If you have the time, fine ahead to do that. But if you don't, I suggest to you, as the Atma Kripa, concentrate on this. Because I assure you, if we are both healthy and lucky, we will really reach somewhere that you have not reached before. So that was one of the things. Another thing I wanted to say was that once the concepts are under your belt over the next few months, we're going to visit a number of texts at that point and then bring up what the text is saying, which will highlight what the concepts you have already understood are. And so from this perspective, and the very last thing I would say is that I've decided to use the same methodology, which is to present some concepts and ideas, some tenets of Vedanta to you, and then follow it up with examples from the text during the Sailorsburg retreat on May 3rd to the 10th of next year. And what I'm going to do is to limit it to only Bhagavad Gita. I think it'll be a very good project. I'm looking forward to it. So we will have about, I think, 17 classes during the week. And out of that, I'll spend quite a bit of time on revisiting the concepts as I mentioned before. And then towards the last half of it, or somewhere close to it, then I will pick up the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita from various chapters to highlight the concepts that we have gone. This will really consolidate your understanding on Bhagavad Gita, which you are already familiar with. So this is the plan that I have. I'll be writing to you in the next few months for next year. So with that, I will close today's class and look forward to beginning this whole process in 2 weeks from now. Okay? All right. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Which you're already familiar with. All right, good. Happy to have you all, and we will look forward to start continuing this 2 weeks from today. And we'll of course have the class next Saturday. So Srinivas says, how does a student be resilient in pursuing Vedanta, especially situations which could break the belief in it? The situation could be health. So Srinivas, I think you had sent me this on an email, and then you said you were going to ask this, so I'm happy you're asking this. So I think it could be that there could be situations where this committed pursuit to Vedanta could be interrupted, as for example in an illness or work-oriented or some personal problems and so on. But I guess one's hope is that you had enough exposure to its truth and veracity before this interruption that you will go back to it. So this is the advantage of having some Shravanam under your belt. And then even if there is some breakage, which is not up to us, Ishvara has given us some situations through the prarabdha karma. And so it's very possible that you may have to suspend it. What is recommended in the sadhana panchakam, for example, it starts, the very first one is Vedo Nitya Adhiyatam, I think. So even in that case, what I would suggest is that in the midst of any adversity, instead of completely breaking off from the study of Vedanta, you keep some strings attached to you by taking some passages of the Bhagavad Gita and just making a sankalpa that I will read this regardless of what happens to me in my life. One of the students was recently telling me that she has committed herself to studying a number of shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita every day with some advantages, with some explanations rather, sorry. So Srinivas, you could do that. You can take a book of, don't just read the Bhagavad Gita by itself, take a commentary by Puja Swamiji or somebody else that you like, and just, even if your life is very busy, even if you are in the hospital, for example, God forbid, then you just read one or two verses. So in other words, keep the fire burning. Don't let it completely extinguish. And as long as the fire is burning, you can make it relit when you have the right circumstance to come up. So that'd be my answer and my advice to you. Okay, hopefully it's helpful to you. All right, good. Hari Om.